Hi, good evening. This is Meredith Lego, and I'm doing a series of videos on Ascension science. And a lot of the content that I've been bringing forward and talking about has actually been content that I've been able to channel from multidimensional beings. And in this particular video, I'm going to be bringing forward a group that I have not shared in the past. They're called the Council of Nine. And I just wanted to tune into that particular group. And it was pretty interesting because there wasn't necessarily a topic that I went in and started to ask about, but the direction of the content actually gets into consciousness and thought, which has been a lot of my exploration, and actually how energy materializes or dematerializes. So I wasn't expecting that. Let me share basically what I received, and I'm also going to share some other content, let's say, to explain some of what they're getting into. So again, this is called the Council of Nine, and I start off by actually asking, who are you? Because I sensed a different energy, and I was sort of interested in connecting with this particular group. So the answer that I got was, purposeful thought is at the center of inception. Consciousness of thought and intention is directed in a single point of energy, thusly creating matter in form. We use the words loosely, for matter is relative to the vibrational frequency of the consciousness source. Energy is directed through intention to move from a single form into a single directed, focused flow. This was clearly demonstrated with your Earth scientists in the split screen experiment and shows the importance of the effect of matter directed under the observation of an observer. This is known as the observer effect. So pausing right there, and then I'll kind of unpack this a little bit. So interestingly enough, they didn't necessarily answer my question, which is, who are you? But I think that they were cluing into, a lot of the different content that I've been kind of working on, and brought forward some information on it. And it's very different in nature than, I would say, or at least the description of some of the content is very different in feeling and nature that some of the content that I've gotten from Ascended Master Hilarion. So again, they're saying that purposeful thought is the center of inception. So again, it's really consciousness that creates sort of the explosion of matter into form, or experience into form, so to speak. In sort of they don't say this in a holographic concept. That would be something Ascended Master Hilarion brings into teaching, but that would be my understanding of how it happens. But they do say that consciousness of thought and intention is directed in a single point of energy, and thus it creates form into matter. And then they say, obviously, matter is relative to the vibrational frequency of the consciousness source. So that pretty much matches a couple other sources that I've picked up information from. But what's pretty interesting here is that they bring up the concept of waveform, and then talk about an experiment. So energy is directed through intention to move from a wave form into a single directed focused flow. And then they talk about and bring up the idea of the split screen experiment, that kind of shows that matter matter basically comes into form based upon the observer itself. And at this point, I obviously had known a little bit about this experiment, but I looked it up again prior to making this video, and wanted to kind of share with you, if you haven't heard about it, this split screen experiment was pretty fundamental to physics, and it was really one of the most famous experiments in physics, in which it was kind of first done by an individual named Thomas Young in 1802. And it was done as a demonstration of wave behavior of light. So if you go back to some past videos that I've done on light, essentially light and photons are nothing more than energy that create information packets, or code, if you will. So, when we're outside in the sunlight or even inside, we're getting information sent to us through ultraviolet light, through gamma ray light or gamma radiation. But if you kind of think about the light spectrum, that's how information comes into our field, essentially. So at that particular time, there was apparently a lot of thought that light consisted of either waves, when we kind of think about it, or as a singular point of a particle, like a photon. And they were trying to prove or disprove, which of those particular attributes light would take. But one of the things that they found is that it essentially takes on the form of whoever is observing it. And even apparently, I know from other studies that have been done, there could be just a camera in a room without an observer, but if the particular person who's running the study has a particular thought, it's still going to take on that particular pattern. So the very act of observing a particle has a very dramatic effect upon the behavior and the outcome. And this experiment was then sort of replicated about 100 years later, in 1927, by scientists Davison and Germer, who demonstrated that electrons really show the same behavior, and then it extends to atoms and molecules. So again, that goes back to the idea that your thoughts ultimately can, create a sound, and the sound ultimately is going to create geometries and patterns in matter, and ultimately they're going to flow. That waveform pattern will essentially flow into a single directed change in the sort of manifestation of matter, and it entirely depends upon what you're thinking or what the conscious observer is thinking. So now that I've kind of given you some background on that split screen experiment, this Council of Nine goes on to say that, as we have said, thoughts and intentions matter, for they direct the vibrational frequency of the wave form as it patterns into your holographic reality. Then I asked the question, how does energy dematerialize? And I'm not sure why I asked about dematerialization versus materialization. It was just how I asked the question. They basically said, through the realization that matter never existed in the first place. It's just an illusion of energy form under the directed intention of consciousness. Remove the directed focus and the energy form dissolves. Now that's actually really, really key. And I've actually seen some live videos of monks who have been, through intention and through thought, through kind of monk meditation, have removed tumors, and I think they were tumors inside of people, essentially. And this was being done under the, so you could see that it was happening because the individual was having a sonogram or an ultrasound over that area the entire time. So you could actually see what's going on in the body, but as the monks, through directed energy, are sort of meditating, I'm sure, on an image of perfection, that mass of tumor essentially dissolves right in front of you. So again, matter is just the illusion of energy under the directed intention of consciousness. So if you focus your intention away from that and towards something else, it's going to change the illusion of the matter. Now, I asked a question, so that, going back, that actually, gets into the concept of the placebo effect, obviously, mind over matter. But I asked the question, okay, so do your bodies, or does your body dissolve while we're sleeping, right? So if, we're not consciously thinking about our body when we're sleeping, what happens? And essentially the answer is, for your consciousness as an observer, yes. For your physical body does not journey to the next plane of consciousness. However, your body does not dissolve for another observer or other observers, because they are directed focus on the wave form and cling to the belief that the body is real matter and form. So real matter in existence or in formation. So therefore, while your body dissolves for you as the sleeper, the body manifests for other observers. And then I asked, okay, so why then do I, as a sleeper, wake up with a sore body or a knot in my neck? So I get what you're saying, but sometimes when I'm not sleeping the right way, I still feel the consequences of it in the morning. So if my body is dissolved, how does that occur? And then the answer is because you hold on to limiting belief systems that keep your consciousness trapped in a dense reality. And we understand the work, all ailments of the body are merely a manifestation of your consciousness intention. And they underlined that as it was coming through, like everything, all ailments are just a manifestation of your consciousness intention. They are all illusions of the mind. Letting go of limiting beliefs and freeing the mind of what is possible opens the doors for miraculous healings to the body. This explains the placebo effect, or how Jesus healed so many. For those individual beings, there is utter and complete knowing, 100% knowing, with no doubt or emotional resistance that the body is healed. So that is absolutely critical. And as I understand it, with the situation of those monks that essentially healed the individuals with the tumors, the entire group, like the person being healed as well as the healers, the monks who were meditating, 100% within every ounce of their body knew that this person was already healed. So the process, as I understand it, is not necessarily focusing on what I'm trying to remove. It's focusing on what already exists, which is a perfectly healed, not even healed body, a perfect body. So it's a body of perfection. So it's focusing on the vision of what should be, what exists, instead of the lack of what doesn't exist. And I think that's really key. And this statement, as I was kind of rereading it, because I channeled this a long time ago, but as I was rereading it, it reminded me of the movie The Matrix. And I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but essentially in this movie, if you haven't seen it, there's a character, and they do happen to be in a Matrix simulation. But essentially, one character named Morpheus is trying to get another character named Neo to free his mind and realize that he is in a Matrix, and that really, you got to let go of the standard laws that you're used to. So they practice jumping off a building, and essentially, it gets to the point when he realizes he doesn't have to apply to the same law of physics, because he can literally free his mind and let go of limiting belief systems that have essentially, created a certain reality that your consciousness has sort of grown up with and formed into. But the reality is you can let go of that. But in doing so, you have to have utter 100% knowing that this is possible. So obviously in many situations, I'm not 100% there yet. So that's more inner work that I have to do. And I'm sure a lot of others do, but it's good to hear that, that people can put mind over matter with 100% knowing that they are healed. And that's essentially what's going on. So obviously, if you're on a journey and you're trying to work on some physical ailments, that's a powerful way to do it. That doesn't involve, drugs or pharmaceuticals or any of the other stuff. Just focus on the fact that you're healed and kind of move on. So with that, I hope this has kind of added to your learning journey. And I will continue to share more in some future videos. And if you're new to this channel, I encourage you to subscribe and, keep what resonates with you and leave the rest behind. Thanks. Bye.